Alright, so I thought it'd be interesting to do something a little bit different and do some Puzzle Rush survival mode. Kind of give an idea of, I do have I like playing chess. I'm not great at chess, but it's fun, as all games are meant to be. So I think we can jump into this. If you're not familiar with Puzzle Rush, um, it's a feature on chess.com that was added maybe over a year ago. I don't remember when they first added it. It's been a while now. But you in survival mode, you just keep going until you can't go anymore. So the puzzles get progressively harder, and you keep going until you make 3 mistakes, and then you're out. And then there's also timed versions of 3-minute and 5-minute as well. So that's how that works. So I'm going to start this mode, and you just have to find the thing here. And so this looks like just a back rank mate. I can see that there's no way for this queen to protect, so we just sacrifice our queen. They take, and we take back, and we checkmate. So I like to solve puzzles by asking the 3 questions. First, I can just see that this is just a free rook, and a potential to checkmate, which means I'm gonna win 2 pieces, and I know that because I look up this diagonal. I can see the king can only be, it'll be checkmate if they don't block with the knight. So I was asking myself, why did they move the knight? And so we take, and then we win that puzzle. So now again, ask, why did they make this move? And it looks like here we have the potential to win a piece, I think. So if we take the knight, they can take back with the pawn. But that'll expose an attack on their bishop, on white's bishop from the black bishop on this square. So this move, it kind of forks my 2 pieces, but I have the option to take back. If they take back this way, then I take back this way, winning the bishop. If they take my bishop, I take, they take. Seems like we just traded a bunch of pieces. Is there anything else? Nope. So, yeah. All right. So, again, their king is not safe looking here. They can only defend this square with the queen. Even though they're threatening my queen with the pawn, the check must be dealt with. Alright, so why did they make that move? Well, they made that move because I have a pawn that looks ready for promotion. And so the response looks like we make this check. If they don't respond by taking back, then they lose this rook, and we still promote. So they must take back, and then we take back with the king, forcing their king away from the pawn, and then we can close, and then we have a pawn that's within promotion. Seems to be the idea here. So, and now they lost that piece. All right, so why did they make that move? Well, maybe they want to move this rook over. So what? Oh, and protect that. No, it doesn't protect. If they move the rook over, they lose this pawn. So what is the tactical idea here? Are there any checkmates? Are there loose pieces? Is there a way to win material? Ah, I see now. So let's look at the angle of the king and the queen here. Do I have a piece that can take advantage of that? Well, once this happens, they're going to lose the queen for a bishop. So we'll be up material. All right, why did they make that move? Right, it doesn't change. Ah. So it was just to simply get out of the rook's attack, but we're pinned. But we can do a pin of our own to win this rook, because if we look at this, then I've got this move, which now sticks that rook to the king so it can't move. Alright, so why did they make that move? It attacks this pawn that's only protected by the king. And they probably have the idea to bring the queen to this square for a checkmate. So is there a way to deal with this? So we have I think so. Here's my thoughts. We throw this check. They can block it or move their king. Then we can take this bishop. They take back with the queen. We take with the rook, and then we're also attacking this pawn at the end of that sequence. And they don't have an immediate way to protect it easily, it looks like. So it looks like that's the possible idea here. All right, so black to move. And here, it looks tricky. So I'm looking initially at this, but we can't just do that right away or we just lose our bishop. So is there some way we can make a check? So let's see. If I make a check, there's two ways they can block it. They can go like this, or they can go like this. Now, if they block with the rook, I can then take this piece, because my queen will be covering this diagonal, and then pinning the queen. Now, is this also just a checkmate? Because then, if the queen blocks, we take this, nothing can protect it, and then the king can no longer move out of check. So this has to be the move. So they chose that option. So now they just lose a rook, and now we can checkmate because, okay, so I was in the neighborhood. Not the exact sequence, but I had the right idea, I think. So why did they make that move? Well, they're threatening to come down and fork my rook. But I'm looking at this interesting maneuver. So this puts the king in check. And then how do they respond? Well, their only response is to either move the king over or move the queen to block the check. If they move the king over, we then have this move here, which can win some material. If they move the queen, we can also win material by taking the knight. Yeah, this fork doesn't look that strong to me. There's nothing backing it up. So the king just simply takes, I think. So I'm just looking at all the responses, and I think the correct response is this move. And then we just take the queen, take the pawn. So that threat really had no teeth. So this is interesting to me because I'm looking at the exposed attack that happens and how they respond to it. So my queen is lined up with his king, or her king. It's a computer, whatever. So could be a her. But they have to respond to the check, and their queen will not be able to get in front to make a trade with mine. So the only other option they have is to either move and then lose the queen. Well, they can only move this way because moving this way would put them in check from the bishop that's now sitting on this square. And they can't go straight, so they got this square, this square, this square, this square. And I think this is just a puzzle to win the queen. So, and then we get ourselves a tasty lady. All right. So I'm immediately looking at my forcing moves here because I'm like, why did they make that move? Well, they were in check. Well, the other forcing move is simply this. This is hanging, and their king can't escape out. So this looks like a one-move checkmate. So I'm going to make that move. All right. So why did they make that move? Well, to put my king in check. Is there any way I can block the check? Not with anything good. So I think what I simply end up doing is my prediction of what will happen is my only move is this square. They can then check again. This piece is hanging, I noticed, which is fine because we have an imminent checkmate here. Do they have anything to continue with? Well, again, my king just squirts out here. They can do some clever stuff like this, but eventually I can work my king up into these safe light squares, it looks like, and then proceed with the checkmate plan. So, yep. So how to proceed? So I kind of figured they would defend against that move. But there's something clever we can do now because of this bishop that I hadn't processed all the way. And it's pinning that queen to the king. So we win a queen by just simply going like this. Because I can't take my queen or they'd be in check. So then we checkmate this way because now they're going to be forced to take. Again, now we're up material. And should be able to win. So why did they make that move? Well, it serves two purposes really, it looks like. And we have a kind of a checkmate situation occurring ourselves. And that is because it, one, attacks this piece, but annoyingly it also attacks this square, which is unpleasant. But is there something we can do? So the king, I'm looking at where can the king retreat to? Well, the bishop is covering this diagonal. Whoops, he's covering this diagonal. If the queen checks here, the king can't retreat because of this rook, and it's on the same diagonal, and it can't retreat to that square because the rook's covering it. They can block with a pawn, but then the queen can come back to here, causing the knight to jump back, making the knight still not capturable because this pawn is protecting that square. But then we can checkmate on this square right here at the end of the sequence. But these all have to be forcing moves. because we have a potential checkmate coming in for us as well. So, so yeah, I think that's the plan, is this queen check. And they did as I thought. So now we come up. And that was it. It was just a 2-move. Just so that we got the theme. So it says black to move. Well, this is an interesting puzzle. Okay. So why did they make that move? Well, one, it pins this bishop to my queen. So if I move, we've got pressure from both this piece and this piece. This is currently pinned, but my rook is under attack. Now, an interesting thing I can do, and I'm not sure how it works, is to take this knight, the king takes back, the bishop checks, the king does something, moves, most likely, but now we have an attack on this rook, winning the rook back, and ultimately we're up. In exchange, I believe we end up with a knight at the end of this whole thing, because we've traded rooks, so rooks will be gone, but this knight will be, and we will have a queen and a bishop versus a queen, and we have an extra pawn here as well. So materially we'll be up at the end. So I think this is the plan, and then check, and then we win that piece. All right, why did they make that move? Well, it attacks this bishop. And if we take back, but we always got to look at how all the exchanges look. So there's 2 ways I can deal with this problem. The first is to make a bigger threat and capture a piece. So I'm looking at this capture, which now says, all right, queen, what's your plan? Which means the queen probably takes the piece back, but leaving this piece hanging at the end of the exchange. So, but when I take back, their rook is lined up here, so they can exchange there, but that's just a fair exchange. At the end of it all, we're up a bishop. So I think that's the theme here. So takes, and then, yeah. So we got the idea. All right, why did they make that move? What are the threats? Well, it's not a huge threat at this point. This knight isn't threatening anything, but I am noticing that it's not protected. And I'm noticing that we have a check from my queen that lines up with it. And these are common puzzles. The only way they have to block is either pushing the pawn up 2 squares, which allows me to just take the pawn and then eat the piece, or they keep throwing stuff in front of it. Now, if they push the pawn, we can throw the check, take the piece, and then their rook is exposed. So, but I think at the end of it all, it's just simply this puzzle. Yeah, that bishop was also a block that I hadn't considered, but I mean, anything other than the pawn push was going to get the knight, I think. So this is interesting. So this doesn't quite work because the queen can squirt out this hole or down this hole. But if I put the queen here, the king can't go either way, and there's really no way to block that check. So I think this is just mate in one. All right. So why did they make that move? Well, it looks like it was to defend this hanging rook. So this puzzle's getting a little bit trickier. So I need to look at piece alignments, I think, because this one suddenly... So I'm looking at forcing moves, the check. How do they block? Well, they can make a very threatening check, or a block. However, it looks like that leads to some pretty yucky stuff. So if rook comes here, we have this check down this diagonal with the queen. So queen moves up after the check. So we win. No, we can't win this pawn because I just looked. This is not the answer. So let's just abandon that plan right now. Is there any trickiness where we can win a rook? Like go like this? No. No, I'm looking at this. Looking at bishop here. But they've always got this. If I do that, then they've got this queen check that gets a little bit. And then they can start to get an attack in too. This seems like a really tricky one to solve. But then there's this idea. King can't escape to here, nor here, nor here. Goes here. And then we can just win this piece. Because I don't think we can really checkmate. So let's start with that plan. Yep. Looks like the puzzle's not over. So we just take our piece. Nope, first one wrong. All right, so we'll go look at why we got that one wrong. What was the other idea? I know there was a check we could do and win the rook, so maybe that was the idea, was to win that rook, and now that the king's blocking it, we trade a knight for a rook. That works. All right, why did they make that move? Well, they were in check. No, they weren't in check at all. However, I am looking at a checkmate theme. So the bishop's covering this diagonal. This check comes in, but then the king squirts out here. Well, I can't check after that fact, because then I just trade rooks, which doesn't seem good. But if I move the bishop just to this square, so bishop up here, that makes an attack on this piece. Possible responses are then their bishop blocks, but then that boxes their king in, bringing this check, making this check winning. So let's go with that plan. Yep. Unfortunately, that doesn't have teeth. All right. So this is one of those trade, win this piece at the end. So I'm looking at check. Something takes back, check. Forces takes back here. Queen's open now, winning this piece. So I'm looking at this because it's undefended. There's nothing defended it, so that's the thing that's bringing my eye there. Everything else is trades, but we'll be up material at the end. We'll be up a knight and a bishop because our pawns are 2, 4, 6. They have 2, 4, 6 pawns, so we will be up a knight at the end of this series of exchanges. Okie dokie. So why did they make that move? Well, this gross thing happens. So, but so what are some possible checks that we can do? Well, there's this one, there's this one. So these are forcing moves. So check king here. King here. This. It's all real tricky. Alright, so the king goes here. The queen is. Let's start with this one. Queen can't necessarily go here to check back and keep. And the king just keeps ducking back on this square. So is there something better? Because I'm looking at this. Is there another way? So if we make this check, king goes here, we're on a light square. So this plan seems silly. But looking at forcing moves, I think is the right thing to start with. It just doesn't look like it's working here. However, our queen is under attack. So if we make the check, we can do something interesting after the check and take this piece. Because then when our queen is there, they can't. This is pinned to protecting this piece, which means we take this bishop and both of our pieces are no longer under threat at that point. And at the end of the day, we'll be up this bishop, because if they do take back, then we take back with the queen, checking the king, and then it's a queen and a knight, or a queen versus a rook and a knight, and I think, and we also have a passed pawn, so this isolated pawn. So I think the proper check is this one. Now we take here, take here. All right, so that's a lot of that was a lot of calculation. So this is interesting. So why did they make that move? They took something, I didn't see what it was. The puzzle came up quickly. But one interesting thing I'm looking at is this, because then there's a theme that happens. This is open and my queen is protected. Even if the queen takes back, she's not on. She's on a light square, and I check on a dark square. So pushing king to the corner, check, takes, doesn't work. So that doesn't look like that plan works, but it's some place to start. I also looking that this is a thing. So this bishop is here. All right, let's start over. There's also this check, but that's not good. There's this takes, and then there's this take, which is not good, but again, it opens up this. Oh, but then this rook is here. Okay, so I think my plan works. Takes, oh, or it doesn't. Sometimes the puzzles are getting harder and harder, so I've got one more, so I got to be more careful. All right, so what does this say? So if I take, They're saying, hey, would you like to trade queens? That's what this move. Why did they make that move? They want to trade queens. What bad happens? Like, my queen is currently protected. So is there a way I can win material? Well, I can remove the defender. Can I get a couple pieces out of it with some funkiness? So I take this piece, they take back, I take the queen, and then they're down a queen. So what is the most likely order they do? I take here on the knight, they take with their queen. I take with check, getting the bishop. They take back with the king. I take with the knight at the end of the exchange because the queen is now on this dark square and I'm no longer pinned. Is there another variation that works? I take the bishop, take the bishop. No, I think the only way to win material is this. Yep. Then we take with check. Oh! No, I take back. Okay, I had the order wrong. So here's how this one goes. That's a shame. Alright, so I was on the right idea. So let's rework this puzzle. So the idea is correct. Take. Alright. Wrong order of operations because I didn't realize now this is open in this whole diagonal from here to here is the battleground. All right, you live and learn. Let's go look at my other mistake. So let's start with the easier of the two mistakes. This was where I had realized that this was part of the plan. This queen moving down here. All right, so we know this is part of the plan because we had that half right. But do we have bigger fish to fry? We have this check. They can't attack and leave the square. Oh, very interesting. So that's a interesting mate. I didn't realize this was a mate. I should have been looking for bigger fish. It's just very unconventional because we're covering this and we're covering this. And the knight's covering this square and checking this square. So that's really a very nice looking mate. Oh, that's cool to learn about. All right, so this was our last puzzle. We looked at that one, so let's look at the other one I failed. All right, so we know that they took this pawn back. And taking back was with the other pawn was not the move that they wanted us to make. So let's start this puzzle up, put it in live mode. Just not entirely clear on what the plans are here. So we've definitely got this problem to deal with, but this is protected. And this is protected, and then they're able to double up here. Because their rook will be down, or their queen will take, and then yeah. I don't know if that's necessarily bad, but we got to find the plan. It's really difficult. So I'm looking at this bishop. It's protected by the queen. I mean, everything is looking covered. Oh, but look at the queen. Who's protecting this queen? Nobody's protecting that queen. And this looks like a move where we simply win it. Yeah, good luck. There we go. I don't know how this is a passed pawns puzzle. Doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Oh, I guess this passed pawn right here is what they're referring to. kind of tying this bishop down to its defense, and the only way they go back is this. Whoops, didn't mean to make an L. I meant to make this angle. Or we just simply take with the rook. So we can keep these pawns doubled up so they're not separated from each other, so they can defend each other. All right, well, thank you for watching. This is one of my first chess videos. Hope you like it.